And we are live. Aloha, family. Today's episode is brought to you by 5 and 7 Tactical Solutions. They are the premier services for self-defense training, law enforcement officers who want to get certified or recertified. Whether you need to get training for long guns or pistol safety courses, depending on what state you're in the state of Hawaii, they offer certifications for Hawaii and also in Arizona. So if you need to guard car training, I actually got my pistol safety courses and certified in the state of Hawaii. I am working on getting, my CCW in 2 different states. That's my plan anyway. Go to 5 and 7 Tactical Solutions LLC.com. If that's something that interests you, I always say we obviously support law enforcement, but there are some situations that you don't want to be caught in a situation where you're not prepared, you're not ready. And they also offer services for people that are not interested in firearms. I'm personally a very firm supporter of the Second Amendment, but I'm also a very firm supporter of people that want to just protect themselves. So they also offer services where you can do unarmed self-defense tactics. And for those that know, there's a great story, and we'll share it probably in our broadcast. They also offer quite a bit of just courses for men and women. If you're a parent and you want your daughter or your kids to learn some basic like in-vehicle self-defense training and all that good stuff, go to 5 and 7 Tactical Solutions LLC.com. That's my very good friend, Brother David Padilla. And if you're interested in any of the packages that they have to offer, use my promo code gLO, and they'll give you $25 off of any package that you desire. That's 5 and 7 Tactical Solutions LLC.com. And that's it. Yeah. So, family, thank you for being here. I got a special guest. This is kind of impromptu. We've been talking about it, but we got a very special guest out there in Mesquite, Texas. He is a live streaming extraordinaire. He's also he's trademarked himself, which is really got my attention. It's a cool thing, and we talked about that. And we're gonna just sit down and talk story. I met this gentleman virtually on a platform called Periscope, which is an app that Twitter had purchased for $120 million back in 2015. A lot of you guys know that story. He was one of the broadcasters that would very consistently put out content and just share his heart. He's a fellow believer. Love the guy. We just got through praying before we got started. And I said, man, if we're gonna do this, let's just like let God be the center of everything that we talk about. And I'm hoping that this encourages you guys. I'm excited to have him, ladies and gentlemen. A very dear friend of mine, brother, the Kyle Mack. Let me get my video ready. We're gonna get started in about 48 seconds. Do me a favor, repost this, reshare it out. We are live on YouTube, Twitch, Rumble, Kick, and of course here on X. My name is Brother Greg. If you don't know already, we'll see you in 48 seconds. Wow, I seen you playing drums over there.
What's up, man? I can't help it, man. That was a nice little group put down, man.
You like that picture? That was a pretty like, oh, who's this sexy guy with the green eyes, man?
What's up with that, right? What's up with that?
Yeah.
How
I
you
didn't.
been?
I mean, I didn't know you played bass.
Yeah, I played bass since I was 12 years old or so. Started the guitar at about probably 10 or 11. And then it was just a natural transition over to bass, and then play a little bit of drums, but I can't play the piano to save my life. I don't know why. I think it's just impatience. You know what I mean? If I sit down and I really concentrated and really put the grind into it, I could. But I've always sit down and kind of just went, oh man, forget it. Because the other just came naturally to me. I don't know why. It just did.
So, how many basses do you have?
That's a great question. I have at least 6 that are functional that actually work, and then I have several that I've kind of Frankenstein, meaning that I've taken pickups out of, or I've taken the bridge from, or I've took some tuning pegs off of and stuff like that. So I have a lot of that are kind of just pushed around. I have a few that someone sent me one time to test out, that was a hollow base, which
Oof.
meaning it just had the outline, it didn't have the actual body to it, and it wasn't really that great, so I just kind of put that to the side, and don't really mess with it anymore. But yeah, about 5 to 6 that I can think of right now that are operational. But I have my baby, my favorite one that I play all the time.
So, what's your weapon of choice? What is your primary weapon?
Uh Bass. I would say bass. To me, there's just something about, when you're a guitar player, you can go off on your own. You can play. You're still in the band. But you've got your solos, and you've got your time to be able to put your licks in. You can stop playing for a little bit. When you're playing the bass, you really can't stop playing.
Right,
And then you also have there's always a connection with the drummer, because the bass and the drummer is that groove. The
right.
bass and the drummer is the person that locks that beat in, the one that you hear first, the thing that gets you out on the dance floor, so to speak. And so I love playing bass, and I love being able to play with drummers that I enjoy. My brother's probably my favorite one, and the best one, that to play with, and it's great, to be able to lock in with somebody, feel that groove, and to fall in the pocket of it and just play. But I enjoy playing guitar and drums occasionally. So
So we have, I think it's a P bass,
okay, yeah,
and
from
I think
Fender.
hmm uh, we've at this house we have five guitars. My daughter has a Fender bass,
Hmm.
and then we have one, two, three ukuleles here, and we have four ukuleles back home.
Right.
And then actually, I have another guitar back in Hawaii. I have a carbon fiber acoustic. I think it's called Carbon Acoustics. They make
Okay.
carbon fiber bought in beautiful guitar,
Yeah.
real thin because it's carbon fiber, and it's a
Right.
small body acoustic, and it's got the sound hole at the top versus the middle.
Really.
Yeah, it's a very unique sound. It's
Wow.
I think it was like 1700. It wasn't too bad. Sometimes those carbon fibers can be upwards of 2 grand or more, so
Yeah. Yeah. They can get pricey. They can get real pricey fast. But I've never tried one though. I'll definitely have to try one with the sound hole at the top. That's very interesting to think about. That I bet it gives off of a unique sound to it. So
it's unusually warm for a carbon fiber instrument.
really,
Usually plastic type instruments are very more on the high end.
yeah,
It's actually got a nice warmth to it. It's weird. If you're an EQ guy or a sound guy, it's got a lot
yeah,
of the what's the word? It's got a lot of low end frequencies,
right,
but it doesn't have a lot of punch, if that makes
yeah.
sense, right?
Definitely, yeah. I actually started out doing sound before I actually picked up an instrument. Believe it or not, being as young as I was, my whole family had a group, and so I would run sound for them, and then later on at church, uh, I would do that there. So I know exactly what you mean by low end, high end, all that kind of stuff. So,
Now,
but
I play bass, right?
I didn't know that.
I'll show you a
So
video once we get rolling. I
okay.
love playing funk. Like that's my thing. Uh,
Gotcha.
I'm
Who
not. Go ahead.
who's your man? Who's your guy? Who's your influencer on funk?
Anything James Brown,
Okay.
Bootsy Collins.
Yes.
I admire um, Victor Wooten and Jaco Pastorius.
Sure.
I admire them, but it doesn't make me want to groove.
Mm.
It's amazing. Just melodically. Um, I I don't listen to secular music really. I try not to,
Sure.
and I mean, I'm not sacrilegious or super religious. Where if there's a
No.
song that gets me to fall in love with my wife, and it's for the most part not telling me to fornicate, and it's a good
Right.
written song, I'll listen to it, and like old school like Motown music. But
Yeah.
um, one of my indulgences that I don't listen to anymore. I love Flea.
Yeah.
Man,
Red
what
Hot
he,
Chili Peppers.
yeah. And then for sure, I don't listen to them anymore. But those they were like Red Hot Chili Peppers on steroids. What was their name? Um,
Uh,
they had a song with called Winona's. What was it? Shoot, it'll come to me. But really funky band, really perverted lyrics. That's the only drawback to them.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Primus, yeah,
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah.
What's the dude's name? I'm thinking of somebody. I think Geddy Lee. I think that's somebody
Oh,
else. But
I can ask Google. Right? Hey Google, who was the bass player for Primus? Les Claypool.
Les Claypool. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, I can't. I really, I've heard his stuff over the years. I really just can't get into that type of music. I'm more of a Motown.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
so my big guy that I liked was James Jamerson, and he's the guy that played on all the Jackson Fives,
Ooh.
Stevie Wonder, all the old, Marvin Gaye. He's the one that's got that plays on "Let's Get It On" and all those great grooving songs.
Hmm.
And then of course you cannot forget Larry Graham and Graham Central Station, and
Oh.
he's a fellow believer, man. He's got some Christian songs out, and I don't mean to just playing around. He's the funk bass. He was the first person to ever actually slap a bass, like literally slap and pop a string on the bass on a recording. So he's kind of the godfather of funk. So a little bit of tidbit of a fact there. So
Philip Bailey. I enjoy some of his playing
yes,
from Earth, Wind and Fire. Um,
yes.
Nathan East. You ever listen to Nathan East?
Who is he with?
Um, I want to say Foreplay, the jazz band, I think.
Okay,
But
yeah.
he's a black dude, but he's known because his bass, he has a mic attached to his bass. It's
Okay,
a skinny little mic, but
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I have a buddy, and you might know his name. His name is Alex Ramirez. I'm sorry, Alex Moran, and he does all the studio work for. He was in De La Holas Trio. I think
Okay.
I'm saying that right. Uh, and they did the song "Heaven." If you remember that song from about 20 years ago or so, and but he does all of Darlene Sheck's bass
Oh,
stuff, and
yeah.
he's the one that did the opening line to "You Are Good," where he slaps the bass at the very beginning to start the whole song off. And I met him through my church, and he's just he's an awesome guy. He back then he was a young gun, he was a young kid, but he was really cool. And we got a chance to sit back in the back and just kind of trade off bases and share licks and stuff like that. And if you got a second, I'll tell you a little funny story about that though.
Yeah, go ahead.
Uh, sure. So uh, the praise and worship leader is was my brother-in-law, and he called me up and he said, "Man, you have to come tonight to meet this guy and hear him play." His name is Alex Moran, and he told me, and he said, "But I have a funny story for you." He said he said they came in for sound check a little bit earlier, and he said our bass player for the church, who's in a big band himself, but he was there and he was kind of messing around and playing with his bass, and he's a good buddy of mine. His name is Dwayne Hagar, and Dwayne was playing with this bass, and so Alex walks up to him and says, "Hey man, I really like the bass you have. Is there anybody that you admire? And he said, yeah, there's just one kid out there. He's really great, man. His name is Alex Moran. And he goes, so Alex looks at him and says, I am Alex Moran. He goes, no, man. I mean, I'm not saying you're Alex Moran. I'm saying I really like Alex Moran. You know what I'm talking about, Darlene Sheck? And he goes, no. I am Alex Moran. And it was him. And he was just like, oh my God. And so now to this day we still kid him about that. It's like, man, you were face to face with the guy. I told him that you were his, idol or whatever, and man, that I laughed so hard when I he told me that, and he gets embarrassed over that completely. So embarrass him a little bit more, but yeah, Alex Moran's. No, I am. No. Yes, I am Alex Moran. Type of thing. So I found that to be quite funny. It's muted now.
That crew that Darlene Check had back in the late 80s, early
Yeah,
90s,
that's it.
they were so professional in their sound and very clean, right?
Yes.
I didn't like the mix in terms of the drums per se. Like the newer
Right.
mixes today are a lot better, but just the guitar player that ran with them, I think he was from Air Supply.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, just it, before I share my story, I'm not sure if Sev is still in here, but he said hello. Let me see if he's still in here.
I
But
can't
it's
see
good.
the chat, so
There's
matter.
probably a button you can try to navigate while I'm talking. But brother
Okay.
Sev is in here, and Ginger and Gail Webb, thank you for jumping in. And those of you on the web
Yeah.
viewers, for anybody that's on the other socials where YouTube, Twitch, Rumble, Kick,
Mhm.
thank you for being here. Just as a friendly reminder for anybody that wants to go live, um, don't worry about the total viewers or who's in there or not. Just remember there are people that can watch from the outside and it may not show in your running total. So just keep that in mind. Just keep doing it. Keep going live. Keep talking. Keep sharing your heart. But here's the story. We played at the church I was with at the time. We played at this. I can't remember what it was. It was some kind of prayer fest, but we played at the Aloha Stadium in Hawaii. So the Aloha Stadium is where the NFL plays their Pro Bowl, or they used to play their Pro Bowl every year.
Oh, okay.
And that stadium holds full capacity. I would say 45,000, maybe 50,000.
Wow.
But we played for some kind of prayer conference, and so it wasn't full, but I think there was at that time maybe 20,000 people there. It was obviously like half full, so around 20,000. And
Yeah.
so we went out to play, and I play everything. I love playing drums, bass, guitar, piano. I play it all just out of necessity. I had to learn how to. So, anyways, that day I played bass,
Yeah.
and so I don't own a 5 string. I can play it if I'm messing around, but that day we went up, we did a few songs, and the bass that they had up on stage, I didn't have my own bass, so I grabbed the bass, and as soon as I strap in, plug in, I'm like, I look at my one of my friends, I said, "What is this?" He said, "It's a bass." I said, "No, there's a fat string on the top, and it's got 5 strings." And I kind of knew, but I'm like, I was nervous, and he
Right.
says, "Don't worry about it, you got it." And one thing I will say that I've been blessed. I may not know a lot of runs or a lot of scales or things like
Sure.
that, but I know how to groove,
Yes.
and I got a good I can go back and forth behind the one, but I know how to always land on the one. I always hope if
Yeah.
I slow fast, I know how to get back on the one.
Yes.
Well, bro, my groove was like on point. I was jamming. You know what I mean? Like, dun, 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 right? And
Right.
at the end of the song, I'm like, bro, my heart was on the floor because the groove I was playing that I was jamming was for a 4 string. I was
Oh.
playing the B string,
Yeah. Right.
and they were
Totally
all
different.
wrong. They were the wrong notes. But because it was in a big stadium, there's these huge, like there are these, there's like a
The
whole row.
subwoofers.
Yeah. So it
Yeah.
felt amazing to me. Bro,
Yeah.
I'm jamming. Boom, And I'm like, at the end, I'm like, oh no, oh my God, I played the wrong chords. I'm like, and I don't even know if
Yeah.
anybody even knew on stage, but I know if I was in the crowd, I'd be like, bro, this bass player is whack. He's playing all the wrong chords, you know? So,
Oh man,
hey, but it
I have
felt good.
had spirit. I've done some really some crazy things like that too. I've literally spent 30 minutes before going. Why is it hollering at the sound man? Why is this not working? And then figured out, oh, I have to plug it in down. Like, oh man, I thought that was the first thing I did. It's like, oh, that's funny though. I teach music too, and so whenever somebody says, "Well, pull out your guitar, your bass, and show us something or whatever," I'll always go, "Yeah, man, I do it, professionally for a living." And anyway, so let's start. So this is this is the G the F string, the Z string. No, no. This is and I always mess with everybody, and they're going thinking, "Is this guy like nuts or what?" And I'll start off with something, and kind of give them a taste of what I know, and go, "Listen, I was just kidding. I know the order and the sequence, so But it's a lot of fun, and I love being musical, and I believe it's a great expression. And I can't tell you how many times that, you know, even though I have been out and ventured into the club and the bar scene, it's not my favorite, but I can tell you that my brother is not with us anymore, my both of my brothers, but uh, some of the greatest times of my life and the times I wish I could go back to or revisit or anything were times were playing bass in church,
Mm.
and just playing for God and praise and worship and stuff like that, and just I miss it, and I miss them and all that. But like I said, some of the best times that I've had have been at playing for praise and worship in church. So I understand and completely get you. I'm not a huge cover person unless I have to learn that cover. You know, uh, I don't sit around all the time and just basically pick stuff. So you know, I just kind of do it when I can.
You
So
know, I played with my brother's band, and we played in Waikiki. And Waikiki is, so this bar that we played at, it was kind of like a grill and bar. That's kind of how everything is in Hawaii. It's a big restaurant, but they have a bar, and so a lot of tourists, obviously. And we were a Hawaiian band, but also top 40, just because people tip. So people
yeah,
tip
yeah,
with they're in
right.
Hawaii, and we have a few token Hawaii songs. And one of the things my brother, and they joked about it, they're like, okay, we'll take your request, but anything Taylor Swift is going to cost you $100. So
Right,
once in a while somebody would tip $100 because they want to hear a Taylor Swift song or Miley Cyrus Wrecking Ball.
right, right,
And
right.
but there were times where I could, because I was working, I had a day job, and we would show up in Waikiki. So I'd be there at 4:35. So it's sunset, and the sun is
Yeah,
beating down on me, and I had to set up my drums. So I was
yeah.
playing drums at the time,
Uh,
and I'm tired, right? And um, I don't know if you know this, but my wife and I are pastors. We're paraleaders, but
yes,
we're not so religious to where we ignore scripture and all those things. And
sure.
I'm a firm believer that um, like first of all, getting drunk is obviously a sin, and I don't drink anymore, but I would have like a drink here, but never in public. It was primarily at home with my wife, and
Right.
something that we would enjoy. I don't do it anymore because I think I'm allergic now, so I get itchy. It turns super red.
Right.
But at that time, I had one drink, and I get pretty warm and fuzzy already,
Mhm.
and I was getting sleepy. And I remember just sitting through a lot of those sets, playing, covers, and I'm like, I don't even remember half the songs because it's like on autopilot because we play them so much. And I
Yes.
literally, and I look at my friend who's a bass player, my very good friend. He's sleeping. He's like literally paid him, and
Right.
it's like,
Yeah.
I agree with you. I'm not a big fan of covers, but that's kind of
Right.
paying your dues, I guess. You pay your dues in the beginning,
It is. And you're always going to get somebody that shouts Free Bird or, Sweet Home
Hotel California.
Alabama.
Yeah,
Yeah. Hotel California, Desperado, all them things. And you're just like, oh,
Desperado.
God, come on,
Ah.
man. Let's just get past it.
So
But,
family, for those that don't know, me and Kyle were talking in the beginning, and he just finished going live on TikTok. So this is the first time we've been live together ever, right? I think we've
right.
never been. So tell everybody that's watching, like, where were you for the past couple years on X? Were you in the shadows? Like, what's your story? Well, I think he kicked himself out, so we'll let him reset his connection. But for those that don't know, Kyle, um, he used to broadcast a lot, and he just told me before we went live that he has, I think, 4,000 followers, 4,000 plus followers on TikTok. I only have like 580. So, what's up, brother Bruce? Good to see you. Bruce Goodman, thank you, brother, for jumping in on X on Twitter. But he has like over 4,000. I don't know if I follow him. There he is. We'll bring him back up. There you go.
I'm sorry, but man, I put an alert up and I switched over and I hit the wrong button and it kicked me off. I apologize.
It's all good.
What was the last question you asked me? I was gonna
We
respond.
were talking about where in the heck were you in the past couple years on Twitter, now X.
So, man, the last 2 years, you talked. It's funny you talked about seasons earlier. You talked about different things and all the things that we go through. And I started out about 4 years ago. I There was a small knot on my left bicep and they did a surgery on it. They messed the surgery up on that, and it left a scar. Well, it healed up. It took a long time. I had to go in the hospital for a while, and I got really sick with that. Um, but it finally healed up and scarred over, and it kind of gave me trouble off and on. But about 2.5 years ago or so, it flared up and I went and saw several doctors about it, and they told me, "Don't worry about it. It's all right. It's just normal." And until I got sick, and so I literally physically got sick and had to be rushed to the hospital, and they opened it up, and it had been infected. So they went in and did a really big operation on it, where they did a diamond cut, which is basically cutting half of your bicep and then it grows back together and that takes 6 to 7 months just to do on its own and I it would never heal completely up. It would heal up to the size of a like a eraser on the end of a pencil, and then it would leak. And that's gross, but it's just the truth. And so I would go to another surgeon and they would reopen it, clean it, and then I'd have to grow back together. And that would be another 6 to 7 months. And so finally I went to it took me forever, but I found a person that does reconstruction and plastic surgery. And he said, I don't really suspect that there's something bad because I'd had another doctor that had told me, man, you might have cancer. I might have to cut your arm off. I might have. I mean, it just scared me to death with no diligence or anything, no due diligence on this at all. And the thing about it is that I finally went to the plastic surgeon and he said, "Look, I'm going to take you in and I'm going to get this, fixed for good. But I don't think I'm going to have to do much. I think what I'm going to do is when I get you in the operating room, we're going to drop some blue dye down in that hole. We're going to see just, what's going on. Then it'll probably take about 20 minutes and then I'll just kind of sew your arm up and that way it'll be all good." And so, I went in with, thinking 20-minute operation, no big deal. And came out 2.5 hours later, and even though they had done all kind of tests on it, when he got in there, my bicep had been eaten all the way up. And so he had to literally, my bicep was flat and infected. So he had to go in, he had to put all kind of like liquids and antibiotic and all this powder and all this stuff. And then he had to take, which is crazy to think about, is he stitched 4 layers up of my bicep. So he stitched it from the bottom to the middle to the top and then to the very top of my arm to finally get that. Uh, and it took him 2.5 hours. He was shocked that nobody had caught it before. And after that, I caught an infection again with that, but it stayed local. It didn't, get in my blood this time. And after a round of antibiotics and having a PICC line and all that, crazy stuff, I ended up getting over it. And so it's so far so good. It's pretty much closed up now, and it's not giving me any trouble, thank God. But that's what's pretty much every time that I would tell, and I know like my Paramac family that's here, like Miss Gail and Dave and some of the others that are watching that have been with me for a while. I know they probably thought and were very frustrated because I would come on and go, "Hey guys, I promise after this surgery, I'm coming back on. I will be back." And then, as soon as that, and they'd go, "You got to have another surgery," and I'd just be, it just lay me out, man, to be honest. And I would just be depressed. And I was, it was to the point where it was hard enough for me to motivate myself to be positive. I knew that I couldn't get on, X or Twitter or wherever
Mhm.
and motivate anybody else because I just didn't have that in me at all.
Right.
So, and I'm not one of those people that's going to fake it to make it. You know what I mean? So that's why I'm now entering back into that whole thing of getting on X and doing the lives and visiting over at TikTok and seeing kind of what they're about, what their setup is, even though I do enjoy Twitter live better.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's kind of been my journey. I lost my brother during COVID, and I've lost 2 brothers, and actually my dad passed away 2 weeks after my oldest brother passed away. So a lot of that was, going on at the same time as the surgeries were happening and things like that. And so, like I said, I'm just now back to the point where I'm able to commit to go live and to be able to do what I need to do and what I feel, God has led me to do. And that's to come on and encourage people,
Well,
and
I'll
just
say this.
do it,
Uh, bro, you've been through hell, you know?
It's felt like it, man. It's felt like
Well,
it.
hey, man, that's such a heavy hammer to drop. But I will say this, man, God's got you here right now for a very specific reason, and
Believe it.
you know, um, I will say we got to do more of these. I'm telling you that right now. There's people that need to
Yeah.
hear a victorious story.
Yeah.
And I, well, first of all, my heart goes out to you, and sorry to hear about your dad and your brother. My
Sure.
brother, in 2021, so he
Mm.
got COVID in September of 2021.
Yes.
He he got better, but about a month later, he my dad calls my wife. I'm in
Mm.
Hawaii.
Yeah.
My dad tells my wife that my brother's on the floor. Huh?
Mm.
Oh, actually, he calls the wrong people. He calls my auntie. Then I call my dad. My dad's in shock because my dad had COVID. Um,
Wow.
he had a harder time fighting it.
Yeah.
So I call 911 in Oregon from Hawaii, and I tell them, "Can you get to my brother's house?" Fortunately, the hospital is literally one street over from my brother's house.
Yeah.
They rush him there. I got on a plane. I got on a plane literally the next morning, or I think it was the next morning. So I'm there. I'm there within less than 24 hours. I'm in Oregon. I think the longest that my brother was in on the floor was 3 days, because I think, after 3 days you probably would have been dead already. So he's been bedridden ever since. He had 7 strokes. Full. He was intubated. He had what's the other word?
Um,
He he's got a trach and a peg, and
Picking a
just
pick, yeah.
and then just recently we had to do how you say it, hon? Colonoscopy bag. What, basically the bag.
Colonoscopy. Yes, yes.
He's fully coherent mentally. He just doesn't have the physical function to move his whole body,
Right.
um, and his vocal cord. Now he's very aware and very much so active in decision making. So if we ask him, to make a decision, he's like yes, no. He'll nod his head,
Yes.
and that season of the world, that whole COVID thing was crazy. And
Yes.
my brother got COVID from a coworker who was vaccinated. And so
Wow.
everybody didn't know. There's so much fear surrounding that time.
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
fortunately his employer, um, and I don't know what the protocol was, but they took responsibility just because it was at the workplace. When he got COVID,
Yeah.
so they covered medical expenses, which was, thank God, because it's, man, and man, I give you
Yeah.
credit, but hospital bills ain't cheap. It's a business, right?
Oh, you ain't lying, man. They will literally run you through the cleaners, man, if they
Yeah,
can.
yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I can. I'm at the stage where I'm still trying to get my physical body back because I had so much time literally laying in a bed or not being able to be out and active because of my arm. Because literally, when you say that your bicep is destroyed, that means from your elbow to your shoulder. So I have a scar. It's not pretty, but it's literally, there's a scar that goes all the way down where they literally just opened my arm up, you know. And at one time they talked about just taking it. It might just we might just have to take your arm. And you know, that was one of the scariest things was a doctor looks at you and says, hey, I want you to sign these papers before we go in because I just might have to take your arm off. And at that you're a musician and you're going, whoa, wait a minute. You're gonna do what now? You know what I mean? Or you might lose functionality in your arm or something. And it's a very scary thing. So, my heart and prayers go out to you and your family and your brother and man, just keep. If I could give you some advice, keep encouraging him. I know it's depressing. I know it's hard and downtrodden, and I know, but I'm sure, man, I'm sure that he really appreciates you guys and really appreciates all the help that you give. Because I've seen some of the videos that you put out and some of the things you talked about with him, and man, you're a wonderful guy for being there for your brother.
Well, I appreciate that, and I gotta ask you that. So, officially, what you went through, was it a blood infection? Is that what it was?
So what would happen is that the bicep would get staph.
Okay.
So that staph would get into my bloodstream. And so once it gets in your bloodstream, you only have a short amount of time before that hits your system and basically shocks you or stops your heart. Um, the last time that I had it, by the time that I got to the hospital, which was 30 minutes, between the time that I took my temperature and started kind of feeling cold chills and feeling bad. I took my temperature, it was 98.7. and then it jumped to 100, and by the time I got to the hospital 20 minutes or so later, it was at 104.5.
Hmm.
So uh, literally, I could have lost my life. They just stuck an IV in and started just taking bags of antibiotics and squeezing them uh, into me just to get that out of my system. And I can't, I can tell you, I had very deep conversations during this whole time, very deep conversations
I
with
bet.
God, some very deep and sometimes they wasn't very nice. I'm gonna be honest with you, Greg.
Yeah.
It sometimes I had the pity trip going on of why me, why now, why this, why am I having to deal with this, or why can't this just so it's one of those things where what else are you gonna do, and I heard a very good message one Sunday that kind of turned my mindset around from the late great Charles Stanley. um, he basically talked about Christ when he went on that Friday. He was the victim. He was the one that everybody wanted to see, and he probably felt like the victim. But when he rose on that third day, he
Mm.
was the victor, and he went through that victory. So even though he had to go through some of the worst pain, suffering, and all of that we all know, and that we've never really experienced truly like he did. But he came from being a victim to a victor, and now we know that he's alive and well and doing. He's at the right hand of the Father, doing intercession for you and I, and everybody
Did
else.
Did you ever have that dark discussion, um, like just giving up? Did you ever have those discussions with the Lord?
I, you know what, I I had during that time. I had a lot of frustrated moments where I said I wanted to give up, but I didn't truly want to. It was more out of frustration. But if
Mhm.
someone would have given me the option, I wouldn't have really done it. I'd have stuck through it. I can tell you though that I have been in that position before, uh, when my brother passed away.
Mm.
And I shared this the other night on X on a live. Was I can remember times where there's a really big bridge that goes over in Dallas, and it goes like 3 stories up. It goes over several different highways, and you have to drive up it, and it goes way up, and it curves to the left. And I can remember being so grief struck and so full of grief that literally what went through my mind was is all you got to do is turn that wheel to the right. You'll go right off that bridge, and man, you know you won't be here any longer. And there was a few times that I thought, that is an easy thing to do. That could happen. But every time I'm thankful that God reminded me of the pain that I went through, uh, to not put anybody else, meaning my mother, my other brother, and my family, through that kind of pain, of losing someone else in the family. Uh, and so that's what kept me through those times, is knowing that, you know, whether I understand or whether I agree, and of course you always want them back with you. uh you know I have tried to deal with accepting why that they were taken, you know what I mean, because literally my brother was my age when he passed away. My second to oldest brother was my age, and then my oldest brother was only 10 years older. So uh But yeah, I've had those dark places, and I can literally say my faith has kept me through those. You know,
How
but
many brothers do you have?
so I have three older brothers, and my oldest two are have gone on to be with the Lord, and my dad has he passed away uh, 11 days after my oldest brother, and I've seen some oh, a lot of grief and woes, I guess you'd say, and but you know God can still be trusted. That's one of the great things
That's good.
that Billy Graham. So let me give you a little story, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go
Is
ahead.
when Billy Graham he did the Billy Graham is my all time favorite preacher. So um, he did the eulogy for 9/11 back when all that happened, and he stepped up to the podium and he said, I don't know why that God allowed this to happen. I don't know why that God allowed innocent people to die. I don't know why that God allowed a tragedy. I don't know why that God allowed for kids or people or whatever to happen. I don't know why that he did these things and these things occurred. But what I do know is that God can still be trusted. He can still be trusted that He's there for you. He can still be trusted that He loves you. Can still be trusted that He's going to look out for your best interest. And I think that encouraged me uh, probably the most is knowing that no matter what we go through, as hard as it is, and in that moment when you don't have that mindset, it's to me it's a comfort to know that God is still with you and he can still be trusted, that he hasn't given up on you yet. And I'm living proof that uh, I didn't think I was gonna get my arm back, and I have good functionality with it now. So that's kind of where I stand at, is that God can still be trusted.
I went to his house in Asheville, North Carolina.
Hmm.
Um, Beautiful property.
Oh yeah.
Um, he is by far, I will say, in my memory, the only preacher, man of God, that there was no scandal attached to him.
New.
Now, I may be wrong, but I'm pretty sure he's had no scandal attached to him. Um,
he
Nothing.
he he said something one time that, and he wrote in books about it, and when the early 80s came around, he said he was under the influence of other pastors, and got in this movement of people telling him that AIDS was a gay
Mhm,
plague from God. And he said, I'd said that one night in a meeting, and he said, the minute that it came out of my mouth, he said, God chastised me. God got me and said, you better go back and correct that. And so he went right back and said, that's not true. God did not God is not afflicting people that are homosexual with AIDS because it's a plague, and he's doing that because he's punishing them, or that's not a punishment or anything like that. And so for years he's kind of he fought that battle of that was something that I misspoke in immaturity, but my
mhm.
goodness, if you know he was almost 100, I believe, when he died. and,
Yeah,
it, and if that's the worst that you're gonna say, and that's the worst kind of scandal that you get into, geez, I think I'd take it. You know what I mean? Like,
but
just to
you said
slip
it.
up.
You said it. It was maturity.
Yeah,
And then really that's old. That's old. How should I put it? It's like old theology out of Levitical law, where they
yeah,
actually believe, right? Where if you were sick, you must be
yeah.
living in sin.
You did
Uh,
something.
yeah, you did exactly. You did something.
Yeah,
But man, I'll tell you this, man. There's just you and I talking. There's some really exciting things that God put in my heart over the past couple of weeks, and I think with what you're sharing, um, there's so many victorious stories that are going to sprout from this conversation and what you're sharing with
Yes.
me. I gotta ask this though: was there anything pre-existing that gave you an indication of what you got, or is it just like out of the blue?
It was out of the blue.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
it. I mean, literally, I had a my arm just started hurting. So I went to a little doc in the box, just a little, like a little clinic. And they said, they did a sonogram. They said, looks like there's a little bit of fluid that's collected, about the size of a quarter. And so, we don't really know what the fluid is. We think it just might be a buildup of just fluid, but nothing to worry about. We don't think it's infection, nothing like that. So what we want to do is we're going to transfer you to the big hospital through an ambulance, and then what we'll do is we're not going to do surgery. Don't worry about that. We're just going to take a needle and aspirate it, which means they're just going to take a needle, go down in there, suck the fluid out, and that's it. It's kind of like getting a shot, except the reverse. And I said, well, okay, that's easy enough. And so by the time that I got to the hospital, they were wheeling me into a surgery room and going, no, I think we need to go ahead and open that up and we need to cut you open and not, how it is. You said it a while ago, bro. The hospitals will take you out if they can. And
Yeah.
literally, they did this big surgery, went in there and found there was no infection and that it was just fluid. And by them doing the surgery, it made me susceptible to staph, and I got staph, and I ended up being in the hospital for weeks at a time after that. So the surgery was not a success, and then they left. Just crazy thing. They left. They did a bad surgery on it, and that's where it kind of started kicked off, and that was 4.5 years ago. So, like I said, there was no pre-existing thing to it. I could work out, I could do whatever, and my arm was not affected, and it never had any problems with it before.
You know, I have a history of, I'm 48, so I'm willing to be on very, very honest about it. But at the time, I got involved well, I first started doing pro hormones. I used to be very into bodybuilding, and the profile
Yes,
picture I have now is evidence of what I desired, right? And I'm going to
sure.
change my profile picture soon. I'm going to do a whole rebranding. But there's a time when I went through pro hormones, which are basically oral steroids.
Yes,
And when I found out that taking oral steroids, you can get the results that you want physically, and great workouts, but you're taxing your liver.
yes,
So I migrated from oral steroids to what we call the oils or the injectables, where I would get a needle and use the steroids and inject it. Um,
yes,
Ironically, to this day,
yeah.
I am so terrified of needles, brother.
Yeah,
Unbelievably, like, even if you can't, I cannot handle. From
right.
when I was a kid, I remember I used to have really bad asthma, and I would have to get shots every week, and I was so scared, and
Yeah,
that's why I have this fear of needles.
yes,
But I somehow I managed to over. I didn't actually overcome the fear. I struggled, and I wanted this physique. I wanted this body. I wanted to
right.
look. Uh, it's not addictive in the sense of chemically, like how like a illicit drug is, but
Yeah,
the addiction came from wanting to be validated,
yeah,
wanted to have this certain look. I wanted to, and I blanketed it all. I covered it all in. I want to be a good steward of my body. I'm gonna, puff up this temple of the Lord and make it look, like big
right.
buff. Like, Arnold, we're gonna work harder. But
Yeah,
really, I was taking drugs, right?
right.
And I
Sure.
was shooting my rear end, and I would shoot up on my thighs,
Yes,
and I do know now that if ever, eh, if I didn't stop early enough, I would be setting myself up for mystery illnesses or mystery things that, where there's heart issues or, just guys that abuse steroids. I didn't abuse it because I used it. I'm not condoning it, but I didn't abuse steroids at all. I did it very clean. And so, but I go to that point where, I started having kids, and I had that fear, like, is this stuff that I'm taking going to affect me or my family for the generations?
Right.
And am I going to live on this earth long enough to be able to see my kids, grandkids, great grandkids? And finally, it got to the point where, you know what, I don't need it anymore. And I gave it to the Lord. I said, Lord, I'm fine not having, massive biceps. I'm fine not having big fat quads,
Sure.
And I'm really excited. We're sharing stories tonight that there's a word that God put in my heart right now in this conversation is identity. That we have way too many men and women today that do not understand what a true and real identity is.
That's right.
Right. And we're looking for it in things that are not lasting. It can be in notoriety and followers, it can be whatever. But if it's not in the Lord, it's very short lived,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know somebody that went through pretty much a similar situation as you. Is they they wanted to look like a wrestler. They wanted to be big.
Yeah.
They wanted to have that physique. And so they turned to getting steroids, and they it started injecting, and so they ended up getting big. And I mean, they would get on the treadmill and they could run 2.5 hours at one point. I mean, I'd be on there and I'd barely be able to keep up 15 minutes, and finally I confronted them and said, what is what's really going on? And they confided in me that, yeah, I'm taking some anabolics and stuff like that. And then they went into kidney failure, and they had
Yeah.
to go to the hospital. And so they said, what, if you don't get off them, you're gonna die. And so they got off, and then a few years later they said, well, maybe it wasn't the steroid, maybe I can go back. And so they tried it again, and all of a sudden their kidneys failed again. And so they said, okay, I'm done. And this person said, when I was on those steroids, I felt so good. And he said, there's people out there that will never be able to get off of them because it makes you feel so good, because it makes you feel uh, so good, like you said, to have an identity of someone looking at you and
Mhm.
going, wow. And that's what they wanted. You know what I mean? They wanted the identity of wow, when somebody saw them. And it just wasn't worth the bad health though.
Sarah, who's in here, I meant to acknowledge her earlier.
Yeah.
And let me read some comments. I'll put them up here. But Sarah was talking about needles and why people so fearful. Brother Bruce, who's in here, that's Bruce Goodman. And then we've got Gregory Chemist in here.
Hey, buddy.
And then Sarah brought up an interesting point about fear. You talking about guys enjoying that, people looking at them a certain way. What I'm finding is that a lot of times when we have this false or short-lived image of ourselves that we're quote unquote addicted to, really a lot of it is fear that maybe they won't like the real me.
Yeah.
Maybe they won't like who I really am, and that's why even that in itself, there's this what is this? What's the terminology? There is this teaching going around. It's heavily here on X where that it's kind of my trigger words. Like one is just speak your truth. Everybody speak your truth. I'm like, no, no, no. First of all, if everybody speaks the truth, we're all a bunch of liars. You know what I mean? So
Right, right.
there's only one truth, right? And that's
Yes.
God's truth. And then the other one is
Correct.
everybody's looking into them, just believe in yourself and you can do it if you just look deep in within and just
Right,
rely on
right.
yourself, you'll make it. Well, No, because there are times when you fail yourself, and there are times when you just don't have nothing left in the tank,
Yes,
right? And so our
absolutely.
true identity and stability, it comes from the Lord. It comes from God saying, "No, I know who you are. I
Yes,
created you." Right?
right.
And man, this is exciting. Let me pop up some more comments. Gregory added another
Sure.
comment. He said, "I used to talk to Kyle about some of my preferences due to the past hurts. I have identity issues too." Man, respond to that, Kyle. That's to you.
Yeah, I've had many conversations with Gregory, and he's a great guy, and you know what? He's just like everybody else. He goes through things, and he goes through his times of trials and troubles and everything else. And I just tried to be there for him whenever he needs. And like I said, I haven't been broadcasting, the last few years, and so I haven't been able to keep up with people like I really want and desire to. But that's somebody that I definitely have been through some ups and downs with, as far as I've been with him at some positive points and some negative points in his life, and it's great to hear from you, Greg. But
It's
but
funny
like you were
because
saying.
you're saying Greg. I'm thinking, oh, he's talking to the other Gregory.
Yeah, Gregory. Sorry, I
No,
shouldn't
no, it's
say
good.
Gregory. Uh, but I completely agree with you. Is that I think that's one of the many lies that we buy into from society, is that we can do it on our own, and that's just not true, man. And I'm telling you, because there's been times I thought, or let me say this, uh, you know I talked to someone that I'm very close to one time, and they knew better. They grew up a believer, and they said something to me, and I immediately, it as being older and more mature, I knew better. Is they said this quote to me, and they said, "What's God ever done for me that I
Mm,
haven't done for myself?" And I said, "You need to stop and sit back and basically repent and say, I don't mean that. I'm just kidding." Because let me tell you, you can't do enough to outdo God. And if you were capable enough to be able to handle all the situations without God, and if it was you, um, you would be in a very very bad place right now. And I can promise you, the people that say, "Oh, that will never happen to me," you know what? I found that probably about 75% of those people usually end up that happening to them, whether it be drug addiction or alcoholism or womanizing or something like that. So, I'll never be on drugs. Something happens, they hurt their back, and then all of a sudden they're on painkiller. It just, there's a million different, scenarios I could throw. But relying upon yourself, there's one thing, to believe in yourself. There's another thing to believe in, that you are the end all be all of yourself.
right. I will say we got a schedule. Uh, I don't know if you ever done an audio spaces before here on or on Twitter X?
I've never hosted one, but I have been a moderator of one, and I've
Okay.
I've actually been in spaces. Yeah,
I'm not a huge fan in a sense of how long they can go, um, but I see the draw to it.
yeah,
But I think the conversations we're having, it would be good to have a group of people be able to
yeah,
do a Q&A style, where we can audibly hear them.
sure.
And I think I, I gotta ask you this question. It's totally different subject, but now in your profile it says you're from is it Mesquite, Texas?
Yes, which is just a suburb of Dallas.
Okay, so are you born and raised Texas?
Born and raised Dallas. Yep, born and raised in Mesquite.
So we in 2019, my wife and I, we were asked to pastor a church. We started pastoring in 2019,
Uh-huh.
but that same year, we were also asked to help open up a drug and alcohol rehab at the
Really?
same time. So
Really?
not only was I a full time pastor, um, I was also full time. I guess there was a job title, so a recovery coordinator, or it would basically be like pastoring these men in the drug rehab. So we opened our first month. We had five residents. The first, actually, first month. But before we opened it, I had to go to Texas,
Uh-huh.
to Wichita Falls,
Okay.
Texas,
Yeah.
and then I went to Vernon, Texas.
Yes.
So there were two hope centers that I would go and visit, and I just spent time and just basically kind of shadow and see how they did their business model, and then we
Right.
brought that to Hawaii. And all joking aside, my good friend at the time, he's from Wichita Falls,
Yes.
and he was a former drug addict. I said, when I went to his town, and I said, brother, if I was from this town, I'd be a drug addict too. So I'm like,
Yeah.
what do you
Yeah.
do here? Because there's no ocean, there's no
No.
mountains.
No.
The waterfall you have, it's fake.
You're in the
Um,
middle of dirt fields.
yeah. And then he told me, oh, it gets better. He says the drinking water. We were made famous because we figured out how to purify sewer water and make it into drinkable water. I'm like, dude, that's not a bragging right. I'm sorry,
Oh yeah. No, no. Yeah. No, yeah, Wichita Falls is pretty much yeah, it's not a place that you want to really visit as and like you don't vacation there
yeah,
at
yeah.
all. There's a lot of beautiful places in Texas, but Wichita Falls, I haven't ever, thought about. I've drove through there many times, but I've never thought about stopping there for a vacation or anything like that. But yes, yeah,
No,
yeah.
I'm not dissing the town because they're good people, but
No, no,
I,
no.
I did go deer hunting in Texas, in
Yes,
Wichita Falls. I went deer hunting. That
yeah,
was fun. But
yeah. It's got some good land out there, like I said. But if you're looking for vacation activities, it's not the place to go.
so there's something going on in where is Joe Rogan? What city is he in?
So he's in Austin.
Yes, Austin. What's going on in Austin? Like what is the deal? Is it like another Los Angeles forming? What is it,
It's
Austin?
Austin is so to be really honest with you, Austin is a party town.
Okay.
Austin is the so it has South by Southwest every year, which is a huge music festival. And basically what they do is they take about 6 or 8 blocks, um, and they block off the city, and then they set up these huge stages on each street, and you have to have an armband that you pay for pre, and so they'll have some of the biggest names come in. They've had Dave Matthews, they've had Erica Badu, they've had uh Maroon 5, they've had tons and tons of great John Mayer come through there. And basically they also have a street called 8th Street and 6th Street, and it's nothing but a row of bars and clubs, literally just one after the other. You can walk into one, and there's probably, I don't know, probably 16 on each side, and uh, there's a college there, and
Okay.
so you got college kids mixed with bars, mixed with the yearly South by Southwest. And so it's a really big town for, um, I guess, if you're into uh, trying to what's the word get with people. I can't think of the word right now. To basically mingle, to
Right.
network is what I mean. That would be a great place because there's so many people that come there, and there's so many people come down there to party and do things like that. So I think that's one of the reasons why Joe Rogan is down there, is because there's a lot of people. Plus Elon's here,
Right.
and he has Elon on there quite a bit. There's just a lot of people that have gotten fed up with California for some reason, and decided to come to Texas. And you know, none of them have, right up the street is Amazon for me, the actual factory. And so there's a Amazon factory right up the street from me, and Texas is a really, really big place. You can drive 2 days in Texas and still be in Texas, man. You know.
I drove. So in Hawaii, if I have to drive 45 minutes,
Uh-huh.
we're already contemplating like, it's too far.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
yeah, because here's the scenario in Hawaii. So if you live on the west side of the island and you got to go to work in Honolulu,
yeah.
you're going to spend about 3 to 4 hours a day driving.
Wow.
And it is only a 45-minute drive with no
Yeah,
traffic.
right.
So psychologically, it really gets on you because while you're in traffic, you turn your head to the right and you're like, the beach is right there.
Yeah.
And you're sitting in traffic for 3 hours a day.
Wow.
And so, Hawaii, if they say like, you know what, it's too far. But the minute we came to Oregon, bro, to me, 3 hours is normal. Like, oh, it's only 3 hours. Oh, yeah, okay. Let's just wake
Right.
up early and we'll go. Now, I drove from Oregon all the way to Oklahoma City,
Yeah.
and that took me forever because I can only drive
Yeah.
10 hours a day and I'm done. Like, let's
Right.
get a hotel, and I try a little bit longer, but no, it's just not safe for me. Um, but beautiful drive, like just the things you see, like you can't get that in Hawaii. Like we drove from here to Boise, Idaho, from Boise, Idaho to Salt Lake City, Utah, and then we slept there. Salt Lake City, Utah to Colorado Springs. We stayed with my brother, and then from Colorado Springs straight to Texas. We passed through the Panhandle.
Yes. Yeah.
That Panhandle, oh my god,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's that's like I can't imagine being a cowboy in those days.
Right.
That's death.
Yes. I
There's
know it.
nothing. There's nothing for you but strong winds that come out of nowhere. Um,
Exactly. Rolling hills.
yeah. So wow. But
Yeah.
Texas is I will say, if Texas had an ocean like inland, I would be there. Like I
W- We do have we have Galveston,
which is down
which
south,
is
right?
as far south as you can go.
Yeah.
So we have we have a actual ocean at one end of Texas, and then at the opposite end of Texas it snows. That's how big it is. Is there's a beach where it's sunny quite almost all the time, and then at the other end of Texas in the Panhandle it snows. So, and I'm in the middle of it. I'm right in the middle of all that. So we get the mixture of it. So, but that's funny. Yeah, you can drive. Literally, you can drive a day and still be in Texas. I mean, you have to stop and get a hotel room just to get out if you went, state to state. So
That racetrack going to
Mhm.
the Dallas airport.
Yes,
Oh my god, I've never seen
yeah,
that's not a racetrack. That's like a
yeah.
whole nother county
Oh yeah,
because it's got a
yeah.
racetrack and what is it, like hotels and malls
Mhm.
surrounding it.
Oh yeah,
I've
yeah.
never
Texas Motor Speedway.
Yeah, it's huge. Like what? No, like it's unbelievable. And
Yeah,
Texas is I think if Texas really wanted to, they could say, you know what, we're done with you,
yeah,
federal. Let's make our own country.
yeah. They
Yeah.
they they, they could. I mean, it would be unwise, but we are big enough, and I mean there's a lot of revenue and things here. Like literally 45 minutes for me is AT&T Stadium, which is where the Cowboys play.
Yeah,
And they call that Jerry's World because that place is literally huge. I mean, you could get lost in that place.
I bet.
And I mean, it's one thing to for somebody to go, "Hey, man, that's a big stadium," but then it's another thing when you actually get there and you look like an ant, from above. And then it's got the huge jumbotron that is the biggest, I believe, screen in the world or something like that. But you know, we have that, and then we have you know many of the sports teams that are like the Rangers and the Mavericks and stuff like that. We have all those things going for us, and then we have a deal here called the Texas Militia, and it's kind of like what you were talking about a little bit earlier, except they're basically they gear up for civil war, or if something happens and somebody tries to come in to invade Texas or whatever. Man, they're ready. And we're talking about guys that literally will take weekends and go off on retreats and just train, and they call it the Texas Militia. And it's something else. But that is it's a and it's not a lot of people label it like a white supremacist thing. It's not that. It's not that. It's just a group of guys that enjoy guns, enjoy, going out and defending their land and doing their thing. And so I haven't seen any harm in it whatsoever.
Well, I think that's obviously political, right? When they label people like that.
Yes.
For me, if you remember my intro, where I one of my partners is 5 and 7 Tactical Solutions. They train
Right.
for firearms, certifications, and that's where I got certified. But one of the things that my friend David Padilla, so my friend David, he's been a police officer for 20 plus years. His dad was a cop for 20 years before him. He started his own company to help guys, learn how to shoot a weapon, how to fire a weapon, and how to
Sure.
handle it safely. And something he mentioned to me when we were live together, he said, Greg, it's your duty to be able to protect your family. It's not my
Yes.
job. It really isn't my job. Now, I will do it because that's what I swore. I got sworn in to defend life and property. And he says,
Correct.
but as a father, that is your job to protect your family.
Right.
And those 2 minutes that you have to wait for a law enforcement officer to come to your home, that may be the difference between life and death between you and your child or your spouse.
Sure is.
And so I respect people that, and the one thing I like about Texas, is that they have the the castle
Stand your
doctrine,
ground.
stand your ground.
Yeah.
I appreciate that,
Yeah.
because I'm not going to go to your house, Kyle, and just walk in your property, because there's an
I wouldn't
understanding.
advise it. I wouldn't
Yeah.
advise it, man. I mean, I'm a gun owner, too. And I tell people, unless you're coming for dinner and I know about it, you ain't don't come on and don't come to the property, because we do have your home is your castle, and literally we pass laws here. We don't even have to have CHO. We don't have to have that. We
Yeah.
can wear a gun on the hip, and it can be out and shown, and you'll see people like the old West literally walking around out here with just guns on their hip. And now is it common for people to go into restaurants and shoot stuff? No, not at all. It's not, like people think about Texas being tumbleweeds and cowboy hats and guns. It's not like that, but you do have the right to be able to stand your ground and to be able
Yeah.
to protect your home. So I agree completely. I own several firearms myself. So
I Sarah brought up an interesting point. I'll put up on screen. It
sure.
says that being from Canada, I can't imagine having a gun in my home, and that's respectable. I
Sure.
understand that. Her family has hunting rifles, but to have a gun, it is foreign.
It is to a lot of people.
But one thing I learned about being here in Oregon, so in Hawaii, we don't have what you call red towns or blue towns. Hawaii is just it's an island. There's so many different political views, and nobody like pushes it down your throat.
Right.
But I notice here, and it's not bad here, but I do notice that if I go into a town where we live here, it's a small town.
Yeah.
It's definitely a red town, right?
Right.
But nobody is out there with guns in their hips, right? There's nobody with rifles or gun racks and their rifles hanging in. They have none of that.
Yeah.
But there is an understanding that if you touch my stuff or
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
perpetrate, you're going to get shot or potentially. Now, one city over, which is 45 minutes, in Bend, Oregon, they had a shooting at Safeway.
Hmm.
And Bend, Oregon is kind of more, and we're not political, but they're more of a like a blue town. Like they're,
Yeah.
um, and I didn't understand this until I moved here, but there are actual towns where people really like, I'm this or I'm this political affiliation.
Right.
And Bend, definitely. So they had this guy, he had a whole arsenal of weapons.
Yeah.
He started opening fire in a parking lot at Safeway.
Yes.
Um, he ended up shooting one guy. He survived. The butcher, this is you can't make this up. The butcher in
Right.
Safeway grabbed some knives and literally brought a knife to a gunfight. But you can't make
Wow.
this up.
Yeah.
Now he ended up dying, which is classic. You don't bring a knife to a gunfight,
Right.
but I think he did save a few lives.
Sure.
Now there was a girl who was in, and they interviewed her. She had a concealed carry
Uh-huh.
in her purse. Her husband didn't have his on him, so she told him, "You go to the truck, go get your guns."
Yeah.
He went to his truck, but by that time they came back into the store, law enforcement already came. Now, however, what Sarah was talking about, she can't imagine, and having. I get that, but I promise you this: if that guy was here in my town, right here,
Right.
he would have been shot in a parking lot.
Sure.
He would have had at least 5 to 6 guys, weapons drawn.
Oh yeah.
Um, and it's not that this is the Wild West. It's just that there's an understanding. No, you don't go and take advantage of people like that. The whole thing with Sarah brought is very true because I can't even imagine having a firearm in my home if the culture is like that. Like in Hawaii, it's mixed,
Right.
but I can't even imagine being in a gunfight and I got to bring a knife. That's
Yeah.
foreign to me. That would be foreign to me. That to bring a knife to a gunfight.
Right. We had something very similar here where um so a guy got out of a car, was brandishing an AR, and then had a bag in his hand and was heading into a art gallery and was obviously going to shoot it up. They called the police, and some guy that was in the parking lot that was going into it had a gun on him, pulled it out, told the guy, put the gun down. The guy turned around to put it on him. He took care of him, and the police got there like 10 minutes later. So,
Wow.
can you imagine they opened that bag up and there was nothing but just gun after gun? And they said if he would have gotten in that gallery, uh, that he could have killed countless of people, but because that one guy, stepped up and did what he had to do, he didn't kill anybody. No, nobody died that day, except for the shooter, obviously. But you know what I mean. And I'm not condoning violence, but I'm
Yeah.
condoning self defense because that
Yeah.
wasn't, that he didn't have good intentions bringing in all those guns. Let's say that, to
Yeah.
the art gallery. He wasn't there to show his guns off.
No.
So, well, I understand what you mean.
What are your what do you see as far as the state of Texas, the climate? We're not just talking about firearms, but we're not just talking about violence. But starting with the Dallas area, and then of course we're talking about Austin,
Sure.
and we're gonna keep it spiritual. But what do you see God doing in your home state of Texas? I'm curious about that.
So we have a very it- it's it- it's it can be frustrating at times because let me give you an example. So our governor, is in a wheelchair.
Hmm.
Okay, he was in a car accident and was wheelchair bound, and he sued the state, and then this is before he became governor. Sued the state and sued the person, and he won millions upon millions and millions of dollars. He has now passed a law that the maximum amount that you can be rewarded by anything is $200,000. So if you file
Wow.
a claim here, yeah. So say, I get I go in for surgery to get my tonsils removed, and they remove my arm. Uh the most I can get out of that suit is $200,000. And he put a cap on that. So there's a lot of people that are not, very happy with that. Uh another thing which, uh there's people that struggle with it all the time, and it's porn. But I don't know if you read about this, but porn has now been banned in Texas. So
How they do that? Wow.
I have no idea. I read about this and I thought, sure, yeah, right. How you gonna do that? And so I started reading about it, and then I saw they passed the law on it. And then I asked a friend about it, and they were like, "No, dude, really? Like, you can type whatever you want into the phone or the computer or whatever, and it will pop up a message that says, your legislature has voted to not have this. We're working to reverse it and all this stuff because it takes away your rights, blah, 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 blah." So, there's things like that, probably, there's definitely some things that need to be taken down like that. It may do some good with people that are addicted to porn and things like that, to not be able to access that. But I mean, you cannot access it at all whatsoever, any of the explicit sites. um and I think that they're doing that to try to set a precedent for other states to do it. But there's a lot of people that are not happy about it, and to me, I don't struggle with that, so it's not something that's concerning to me or anything. But like I said, there's a lot of power plays that Texas does, and like I said, capping it to 200,000, banning porn. Uh, about 4 years ago or so, or 3 years ago, we had a really bad snowstorm that came through, and it
Right.
lasted for like a week or so, which is rare in Dallas and East Texas. And they literally shut our power off, and because they wanted to save energy. So that meant no heating. That meant you couldn't have any electricity. You couldn't light a room up. And I remember literally it was it was like 1 degree or minus a degree at that time. And I remember literally being under 3 to 4 blankets in a hoodie with sweats, and still shaking. And they would turn it on for 45 minutes, and that would be your time to run to the bathroom, to run to the kitchen, to grab something, do whatever you need to do. And they'd shut it off. And they did this for like 5 days straight. And I can tell you, man, if that was some hell right there. If you want to talk about it, just being so cold that you go, man, I got to go to the bathroom, and then you pull the cover off and go, not that bad, not I don't have to go to the bathroom that bad. It's so cold, man. But uh, like I said, I believe that God is in control, and I believe that no matter who's voted into office, no matter what
Mm.
happens, what goes on, I believe that God is going to still be on the throne and still
Yep.
be in control. And I think that we get too caught up in who we going to vote for, who are we going to back, why aren't you doing this, why aren't you doing. and we need to remember that it's not political and the president that's in control, that God is the one that's really in control, if we're being honest about it, because there's not a man on this earth that can save your soul, or set you in the right direction, or set you up.
You brought up some key points, especially in the area of Texas, and the, first of all, I love the fact that they banned porn.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
amazing.
completely. Yeah.
I will say now, and some people know this, some probably most don't, but like for me and my wife, pornography was an issue in our marriage, and that's something that I had to really be willing to walk through. Now, I never had issues with drugs, or like I
Right.
didn't do crystal meth. I never smoked weed, even though I'm from Hawaii. I never had
Right.
any of those issues, but it was always those closet things that,
Sure.
you know, and the fact that, my wife and I now we're about to do some marriage conferences, and God's opening doors for us, and having 4 kids, and there are things that the enemy will use in our past to say that's who we are, to identify, no, this is what you are, this is, and coming to terms with, no, 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 there's a reason why there's a cross, there's a reason why there's a death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus, that I'm forgiven, and all of those past histories of me are, they're null, they're void. um but when you talk about Texas, I'm like, there's a battle in our nation when it comes
Yeah.
to righteousness, right?
Yes.
And even though Texas has got obviously their pluses and minuses, the fact that there are some righteous legislation going on, what I do believe, Kyle, is that there's a righteous remnant in the state of Texas that are pushing these things through. First of all, through prayer.
Yes.
We do have a good. My wife and I are prayer leaders for. It's a prayer network based out in Oklahoma City,
Right.
and we'll be in that area actually in October. Um,
Nice.
but yeah, I'll lead in with this: is man, you hit it on the money. Like, we're building our kingdoms, we're establishing our governments, but there's only one kingdom that really stands above it all, right? And
That's
that's
right.
that's God.
Yeah.
And for some reason, in America, we forget that there's a history book that shows all the other fallen kingdoms that came before us, and for some reason, we don't think
Yeah.
that that's possible for us.
Right.
You know what
Right.
I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
And
so naive in that.
yeah, I think it's what you said. It's maturity and it's immaturity. It's people, like I said, that will say things like, what has God ever done for me that I haven't done for myself?" Man, if you break that statement down, that is really deep, because uh, buddy, you're not taking your next breath. You're not taking your next heartbeat by thought. You're not thinking about those things. That's just, that's God. And I, you know, a lot of times His ways are not our ways, but His ways are always the best ways, is what I would say. You know, and I would
Amen to
much
that.
rather. I'd much rather put my faith and trust in Him than I would in society and man. And you know what? Let's be real. There's a lot of mockers, scoffers, people that make fun, or want to you know talk bad about Christians and our belief and stuff like that. But my brother used to say, I'd rather be justified by God than be exalted and justified by man. And that's kind of
Yeah,
the belief that I've always lived by, is I care more about what God has for me and says than I do that man has for me and says.
I think it's Psalm 139, where when David the psalmist writes that, even before I was born, you knew me. You
Yes.
you wonderfully and craftily created everything about me, all my inward parts, all of my
Correct.
everything. And it alludes to, without, I mean, you can make an amazing movie just on the scripture, that even before that God entrusted us to this human family to steward this child. God already had the blueprint and the DNA already written,
That's right.
and and it's and he identified us through that, and everything about us, he wrote the code for it.
Yeah.
And my friend, let me pull up this comment. I'm glad I saw it. Sarah wrote, "It's like that song, 'He Knows My Name.'" Very much so.
Very much so. Yeah.
Very, very popular guy out of Texas sang a song.
Yeah.
Brother Israel Houghton. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
he knows my name.
Oh yeah.
But I think we're gonna have to land the plane in about a few minutes. So I want to give you an opportunity. Um, what I typically do, Kyle, I do
Yeah.
rapid fire questions to kind of land the plane, but
Sounds
I want
good.
to give you an opportunity to share something on your heart before we do the rapid fire.
Okay. Sure. So I would encourage people that when I was younger, I had a totally different vision of me at 45. I had a vision of, being a celebrity bass player or guitar player, musician, and just being out there, and it it took me a while to learn, but something that I heard a very wise man say one time is, we're not physical beings that are going through a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a physical experience. That means that we are, the Bible says that our life physically here on this earth is like a breath, like a vapor. It's just this one, and it disappears. And there's a lot of people that live out there and they live off their riches and their gold and things like that. And they say, what is God? Not, what is God to me? I've made all my successes. And I would encourage people to remember that, make that decision before it's too late, and make that decision now to live for God. And I don't mean uh, any other God that has been listed or made up. I mean Jesus Christ. And I would encourage people that the time wouldn't be tomorrow, because we're not promised tomorrow. And I've seen that firsthand, unfortunately. But you know what? To right now is the best time. And to be able to understand again, this life is just a breath. We're not spiritual beings having a fear. We are physical beings just having, just here for a little bit. We're spiritual beings in reality. So I would encourage people to get as close to God as they can.
Well, thank you for sharing that, brother, and truly heartfelt. And I'm glad we did this. I'm glad that you shared a little bit about the chapters that you had to endure. And I'm encouraged that, and I'm not conflicting what you shared earlier. I do know that God, I grew up with this God is in control. I also I reshaped part of my personal, not theology, but interpretation that God is very much so in charge in my life.
Sure.
But I do believe that He's also giving me the pen, and
Oh, I
He's
agree.
given us
Yeah.
the pen, right, to write out some chapters.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm grateful that we can do these things where we can go live on social media, we can
Sure.
do conversations and just encourage people. So I want to say thank you, and then
Amen.
let's do a rapid fire,
Yeah.
and then
Sounds fun.
let's land the plane. So question number one. There's no right or wrong answers, and if it's a question that you think you shouldn't answer, you can just say, "Hey, man, I don't think I should answer." So, question number
All
one:
right.
why did you do this live stream with me today?
I think it's been a long time coming. We've talked, we've crossed over, each other for many, many years. We've said, hey man, we need to get together and do something. We kicked around ideas and times, and things have happened, and man, I just, it was a great night. It was a great time, and I'm glad that we were able to get together. And to be honest, I really look forward to doing some even more stuff with you. And I think that we have a whole lot more in common than we do than in common. And I really enjoyed, coming on and being on tonight. I
You
really.
and I, we're asked to go on to American Idol. I
Uh-huh.
play the drums and you play the bass. What song are we playing?
Let's see. That's a good one. Uh, let's play Uptown Funk by Bruno Mars.
Okay.
Let's
I'm
play
gonna need
Bruno.
some practice.
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
Question number 3. Who's more legit? The Kyle Mack or Toby Mac?
Oh, let's see. I'm gonna have to go with MC Hammer because he's too legit to quit, man.
Okay. Question number 4. Will DC Talk ever have a reunion?
Oh, I don't think so. I think there's too much bad blood. Uh, I I think there's some bad blood there, but there's some stories there. So I'm not sure they'll ever have a true blue reunion. Maybe a concert, but not a reunion. So
Texas barbecue or South Carolina barbecue?
Texas barbecue, by the way, all the way. I've been to the Carolinas. I've been there and I've had their barbecue, and there's nothing better than Texas barbecue.
You don't like that mustard binder?
Nah, nah, man, no, 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 no.
Okay, question number 6. Here we go.
Yep.
Uh, a big fat 96 ouncer from, I think it's a Roadhouse in Texas. The
Yes.
famous steak or A5 marbling score of 12 Japanese Wagyu cooked by the finest chef in Japan.
So because I've never had the one in Japan, I would probably want to try that because I have actually tried the Texas Roadhouse one and I know what that's like. So I would be open to seeing what that's like.
Okay. So being from Texas, is it crawfish or crayfish or crawdad?
Uh so it's two different things. So if you're putting it if you're putting it into like gumbo, it's crawfish. If it's actually still alive and still in the water, it's crawdad. So it's two different things. So if it's gonna be if it's actually in the cooked and dead and already in the gumbo, it's crawfish, and then if it's something that's in the water, the skimming around, it's crawdad. Is the way we say it here.
Real quick before question number 8, Dr. John, we see you. He's on YouTube. Thank you for being here. Question number 8. If I drive 95 miles an hour, is that fast enough in Texas?
Probably you're probably about right there. You're probably about right there, except for a few people with motorcycles that are gonna pass you up, or unless the bars are letting out and they're really all over the road. So yeah, 95 is pretty good here. So yeah, you're about right.
Sarah put 95 question mark. Sarah, they drive fast, and Texas has a lot of long straightaways, so it's
Oh,
kind of okay to go 80. Actually, 80 is like
it's
acceptable because of the
yeah,
speed limit.
yeah. You can get 85 and not get ticketed. So
Now we're almost here, landing
uh,
the plane. So money, finance is not an issue.
yes.
Where would you like to take yourself and your family?
Oh, probably somewhere like Colorado, uh, mountain, snow, cabin, that kind of a area, lake, lot of greenery, rolling hills, but more of the colder climate because we have the rolling hills here in Texas and the Panhandle and all that, but somewhere cold, somewhere where you can kind of camp and stuff like that, but have a cabin to go to at night and just hang out and spend time being a family.
Okay. last and final question. I ask this on every live stream, podcast, and whatever interview I do.
Sure.
What is your desire for the next generation after us?
So that's a really great question. My desire just for the next generation is for them to not get caught up in what the fad or what um, the agenda or the cool thing is going on right now. Is don't allow your focus to be pulled to one side. uh, it's kind of like the Tide Pod challenges and stuff that people died over because they wanted to be recognized. They wanted
Mhm.
to be stars on TikTok, so they would eat a Tide Pod. Uh, but going even further than that, just that our generation would turn their eyes more to God than to each other or to man and woman, and see the difference. Because, like I said before, that God is the one that's in control. Man is the one that thinks he's in control. And so I would love for the next generation to have, you know they someone said, with all the things that are coming back in style, I can't wait for integrity, strength, and for lovingness to come back into style. And I agree with that. I think we've kind of lost our integrity. So I would love to see integrity come back into style. Of course, that's integrity is doing the right thing even when no one's looking. And I guess I'll end my rant on that. Is that I hope that the younger generation will look to God and not to man.
I'm on board with that. I know my desire is to, when I'm gone, I'm hoping that what I leave behind is generational,
Right.
um, and multifaceted. It's not about money, or now I do obviously want to leave something for my kids to where they don't have to struggle financially to be in their calling in life.
Yeah.
Finances should never be a deciding factor of who they become. The other thing is, I'm on board with that. Like, people, their identity falls in the wrong things.
Yeah.
And it hurts for me to see that, because I've been through that. I'm sure you've been through a lot of that.
Oh yeah.
And so I'm on board with that. And man, I will say this, man, it's been fun. I wish I could do more, but I gotta go get some ice cream. Ice
Yeah.
cream for my son, and
Um,
then some spark. We got to get our sparkling water. There's a
oh, I,
sparkling water that, like, it's called Gerolsteiner. It's from
uh-huh.
Germany. Uh,
Right.
yeah. So, but we're gonna do this again, and I'll say this:
Please do.
anybody that doesn't know who Kyle is, his username, is it the same on all social media outlets?
The
Was it
Kyle Mack.
okay? So it's the Kyle Mack. Since we're live here on X, Twitter, it's the Kyle Mack. Don't use that name because it is trademark. True story.
Yes.
If you want to connect with him, and I hope this is still active, it's beacons.ai/the Kyle Mack. That's how you can
Yes.
kind of connect with him. And he's a Christ follower. Um, I love him, other than the fact that he does say he's a Dallas Cowboy fan. So other than that, he's a
Oh
good guy. My wife is
man.
doing a like, whatever.
Oh,
I'm
all
just
right.
I don't I'm just kidding. I don't even care about
Yeah.
football too much. But Kyle, you are the man. Thank you, brother.
Hey
Um,
man, thank you. It's
what I'm
been
gonna
my
do
honor.
is we're gonna do our fancy video outro.
Okay.
Once the live ends, we'll be in the green room, and I just want to do my official goodbye. So just hang on for a second, okay?
Sure, absolutely.
Family, I just want to say, we really appreciate you being here. And if you don't know who I am, obviously it's all in the profile descriptions and all that. But I enjoy doing these a lot, and I'm hoping that you enjoyed it as well. And so, if you missed the emotional, heavy content, when I end the broadcast, go to the very beginning. Within the first 30 to 45 minutes, you're going to hear his story on the chapters that he had to write out for himself that were extremely challenging. So, I'm very blessed to have had Kyle in here. So, be sure to share this out. love on each other, family. And as I always say, thank you for your time. Thank you for tapping the screen, for the hearts, all that good stuff. But most importantly, family, thank you for your time above everything else. I appreciate you guys. Until next time, as I always say, love you guys. God bless you guys. Ahui ho, aloha, and mahalo. Yes, sir. Chew.